Welcome to the SPEAKPact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Roze, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the SPEAKPact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Roze.
Welcome back to SPEAKPact. We are thrilled that you are here with us today, and you are going to be richly rewarded by utilizing your time with the SPEAKPact podcast today. We're going to dive into an area we really haven't dove into yet on the show, and that is the area of data and what that means to you. Why is that important to you? And we have the tech innovator herself, Vinnu Deshetty, with us. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her in a moment, but welcome, Deshetty. Welcome, Vinnu.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you agreed, because you are the one to come to when it comes to this subject matter, and especially why it should matter to the average speaker. So just a little bit about you. You are a veteran in the industry, over 25 years. So you've seen a lot of changes in tech, I'm sure, along the way, especially recently. But there's been some big leaps right along the way, and we're in one right now. So you are the CEO of the Event Tech Hub, the woman to come to. You are an event ROI coach, which I'd like to dive into a little bit, and especially why that's important for a speaker. You help CMOs, chief marketing officers, optimize their events. Well, of course, they're the ones that choose the speakers, right? So it might be important to know what information they're being fed. You equip them with strategic data, and I'm sure they have to base with that data. They have to base who they're going to invite to come and speak. You combine your tech insights with your event planning, with even storytelling. So I want to dive into how is this even important in choosing your topics as a speaker and choosing the stories that you're going to share within your talks and how you deliver those. So that's going to be a lot of fun. What was interesting to me is that PCMA, which is the biggie, right? When it comes to the event space, and I used to know what it stood for. You can tell us that here in a little bit, but they utilize your event leadership. You were recognized as the top event tech innovator by BizBash. Not a small accomplishment there. And you've got all the degrees, all the good things. So let's start off by you talking a little bit about why is data important to a speaker?
Well, there's data everywhere, right? I think, especially during the pandemic with all of the event technology that was coming our way, whether personally, professionally, or especially event organizers, we were just getting a lot of data. And interesting part is, for those of us that have been in the tech business, that data has always been there. And now we're just actually seeing event organizers and organizations saying, wait a minute, there's something that this data is trying to tell me, but what is it? And it can seem really daunting, right? Because there's a lot of data silos. There's a matter of figuring out, what do all these digits mean to me? And you hit it spot on in the introduction of talking about how the data really can inform the event organizer what topics to do. But what's also interesting is that data can also help speakers develop their content and be able to not only deliver the content, but curate that content so that the audience really is retaining it because it's meant for them, right? The data really just says a lot, can just say a lot in ways, but it's a matter of like trying to figure out what it is saying, right?
So I'm just a speaker. I'm not paying out the big dollars to seminal organizations like you, right, as the event coordinator, organizer, to get all of the facts and figures and data. Number one, how do I tap in to that data that they've paid? They've invested a good amount of their resources into getting, because they see the value of it. How do I tap into that as the speaker so that I can be more appealing to the decision maker who's going to choose whether or not I'm the one that gets to get on that stage, but then also how I can connect with the audience in a much more powerful way, because they understand who the audience is and what the audience is really looking for in a much deeper level than maybe even I do, because of the work that they've put into understanding the metrics.
Right. No, I think the first place to start is obviously with the event that you're going to. If whether you're doing a call for papers or an abstract, and going out to an organization is really asking them who's attending this event, because it may not always be their members or their sales. If it's an internal event, what department it belongs to, but really starting there and asking for that data from that organizer. And that organizer, so it's kind of funny. They may or may not have it, right? Event planners, organizers, marketing people are probably some of the best people on earth that have the greatest gut instinct, right? They're working with the people every day, the attendees, the registrants. They know who come. But now they're being armed with data. There's this evolution of how data savvy our event organizers are becoming, and it's increasing by the day. So I would hope that they're on this journey to have that information handy for them, right? They've already got it for their exhibitors, right? That's in their prospectus that says, just kind of demographics of what are people, who's coming, right? The demographic information. But that information can also be useful to speakers. So ask the event organizer who's attending, what information. It's very similar. And if the event organizer is not handing that information over so quickly, go over to the exhibitor tab or the sponsorship tab and download the prospectus. Mostly, I would say 8 out of 10 times, you're going to find that information there. And then you'll know who are you going to talk to, and who that audience is and how that breakdown. So then you can deliver that better message. The second way is, if that's not the easy way, I know AI, especially in the speaker community, it can be kind of controversial, but here is a way where it can be beneficial for you. Whether it is using Gemini, Perplexity, any of the free ones that are out there or the paid ones, what I would do, and I have done, is I've gone into there and added a prompt that would say, I'm going to be speaking at this event. I anticipate that the attendees are this, on this date. I speak about X, Y, and Z. What do you think would be the appropriate topics that this group would be interested in? That's one way to kind of get around, additional information to support you. Again, AI is only as good as what it's learned, so it may not be 100% accurate. And you also probably have to talk to it a little bit more, just as if you were talking to a colleague, and just keep prompting questions until you really feel like you've got the answers that you have. But that definitely is a great place to start.
Fabulous tip. And also fabulous backdrop, because AI, like any tool, it can be a dud or it can be really powerful. Let's talk about a hammer, right? A hammer in the hand of somebody who just is not utilizing it correctly could be dangerous, right? It's just, it can, I don't know, completely wreck a house, whatever. Or it could help build a castle. And AI is really the same way. I'm so glad that you brought that into the picture, because those who believe they can just utilize AI as an answer engine, they're not getting it. They're not getting the power. And especially as a speaker or somebody trying to relate to an audience, it is very powerful. But you said it's as if you were speaking with a colleague. So it's not like you're going to a dictionary. It's more a conversation. And the more information you offer within that conversation, the more the recipient understands and can give some valuable insights. And then again, you take their insights, you acknowledge it, examine it, but then ultimately you make it your own. You decide what is valuable in there and what you need to add or subtract to. So I love that you brought that piece in. Super simple strategy for any speaker to, at least as a starting point, if nothing else. Thank you for bringing that to the table.
Absolutely. And yeah, no, I'm an advocate of using it with guardrails, right? Knowing what you want to get out of it and auditing it as you go along, but definitely use it as a tool that can be super powerful for you.
I love that you said that. Utilize AI with guardrails. We pull quotes from these shows, and that's going to be one of them because that is so true. All right. So tell us, I'm going to ask one more question about the organizer side of things, and then we're going to dive deeper into the speaker side of things. So as you know, I was the founder and producer of the very large scale. It was a suite of wellness events, and the biggest one was the Texas Natural Wellness Expos. What value could you have brought to me as the producer to grow my event year over year? What if I were to have brought you into the scene back then? What are some of the things that your data could have done for my event?
Absolutely. And I love that starting point because a lot of people say, well, what can you do for me? And I'm like, well, what are your goals? And that's really where we start. We start off with, what are you interested in doing? And you were very clear. I want to grow my event. So that gives us some parameters of where we can go with that, right? So, okay, what kind of, you want to grow your event. So in order to do so, if you're growing it in terms of attendees, we need to make sure you're collecting the right kind of data. And really diving in deep of looking at what information you're collecting on the registration front that you're currently getting, what perhaps should you be getting, and how can you bridge that gap in between. And then taking that data and really figuring out who are the people most likely to come to your event, who are the people not coming, and maybe, is that a group that you want to grow, or is that a group that maybe you just don't want to put that many marketing funds into, and you want to put more of your effort into where you're seeing more of the likelihood of people coming. And also, one of the biggest things I'm doing now is going around really becoming the data advocate is around intent. Why are people coming to your event? And are they getting that when they're there? So it's trying to figure out on the pre-event side, why am I coming to your event? And then trying to figure out on the end, did they actually get that? And if they didn't, what can you do to change that? And again, it's kind of about segmentation, right? Those that are telling you they want something else, is that in line with your mission? Is that the group of audience you really do want? And so there's just so many ways to dissect it, right? And every organization is different. Everybody's got their own goals, their own objectives. And it's a matter of matching not only what the event is the event data, but also your organizational data, right? A lot of times we as event organizers think, as long as our event is successful and what I deem as successful, then it's a successful event. But if you're part of a larger organization and the event is one of many tools that it uses to gain success, then how does that stack up? So that's another level of how we use data to kind of come in and just show that events are really powerful. There are a lot of data out there that says in-person events is where it's at in terms of closing business, if that's the type of event and your objective. But now, how do you have the data within your organization to prove that to your leadership, to say, yes, we have a seat at the table because we are a valuable event?
Brilliant. And something that I feel like is really important that I hope everybody in the SpeakPact audience heard was the very same reason that this data that you bring, right, is important to an event is identical. It's the very same reason why this kind of data is important to the speaker. What are people coming for? And did you deliver it? Did you give them what they came for? Right? Because that's going to get them to come back and tell their friends and come back and back. So there's layers of this. So number one, if the event organizer understands that, then they market the right way, right? They do all the right things, and they choose the speakers that are going to help deliver that. You come, you deliver that. The organizer is going to fall in love with you because you helped them achieve exactly what they set out to achieve. The audience is going to love you because you delivered what they came to receive, and they're going to become your fan and follow you to all the other places that you speak at. There's so many layers to this. So let's talk a little bit about the actual implementation of some of this data. So I'm a speaker. I've been invited to speak at this event. I do have a decent idea of why they're putting the event on, what people are coming for. And I've done my homework, the homework that you've given me to do. I get on the stage. Or even before I get on the stage, how do I utilize that data to choose what stories that I share and the way that I share it? Like, how can I put some of that data into action?
One of the things that I love that organizers do is really including speakers in the tech stack of the event, right? So if you've got a mobile app, and especially apps that allow people to add the sessions to their schedule, right? And I just did this actually recently at a couple of events. So I was able to, as a speaker, I was able to go into the app, and it was published publicly, where I could see who's attending my session ahead of time. Now, this only really works if the app is promoted in advance of the session. I'm sure there are a lot of speakers that can relate to this, and people where the attendees are adding it to their schedule. But I'm able to go through that list. And even though it's not a spreadsheet of data points, I can go through this through the app, see, okay, these types of people are attending, whether they're, however you segment your audience, right? But I'm able to do that visually and kind of take that into frame of reference. So recently, I was at at the Florida Festivals and Events conference, and I usually, when I go to a conference for event organizers, I have a 50-50 split of industry suppliers and event organizers. So I was prepared with both stories. When I was looking at the app and seeing who was attending my session, I was like, oh, they're mostly event organizers. So I knew to shift my conversation and the stories that I was going to tell around more on the event organizer side than the other side. Now, I verified that. I love when I speak, I like to know who's in the room, whether it's a matter of asking questions and people raising their hands, or I actually love to use Mentimeter and ask a few polls. And I'll just ask the poll. And one poll I did was, are you an event organizer or are you a industry partner? And so on the wall, on the screen where I've got my presentation, everyone in the room can see who's in the room. So they know when I'm speaking that I'm speaking to someone in that audience. And hopefully it's more than one person. And it speaks to many people in the audience. But that gives me, that's how I use data. It's not looking at a spreadsheet, but it is involved looking at content and information and digesting it and analyzing it and then doing something with it. So we all have data geeks inside of us. We just don't know it yet.
Ooh, okay. So many pearls of insider wisdom here. And I want to touch on two of them, but just in that last little segment of what you said, there's pages of notes. I hope that the SpeakPact audience will go back and listen to that, because this only comes from the decades that you've been in the industry and in the tech side and data side of the industry. So, and you're on both sides, which I love. You are the data woman, right? The tech innovator, but you're also the speaker who's utilizing what you're utilizing your own tools and getting out there and proving the process. So a couple of things I wanted to touch on. deep insider insight. And if speakers aren't doing this, do it, right? The leverage the event tech that's already in place, the tech stack that's already in place. Go in and study who is saying that they're going to be there and who's signing up for which talks, which keynotes, whatever it might be, what kind of vendors are there, because those vendors spend a lot of their own resources making sure they're at the right low, because it's very expensive for them, right? That they are attending the right events. So glean off of other people's research by utilizing what's already freely there for you. And then of course, asking questions of the organizer as deep as they'll answer them. And then utilizing some tools that are out there for us. So for those who aren't familiar with Mentimeter, can you just kind of just briefly say what that is and I love the way you utilize it to get that audience engagement, but also give you insights you need as you're doing your talk.
And as a speaker, there's so many other things that you can use Mentimeter for. It's an online platform that allows you to use engagement tools like surveys and polls, word bubbles. I've even used it where I've asked the audience to give me their input. You know, at one point was, what data points do you collect? And they enter it in on their phones. They scan a QR code on the screen, and then up pops up on their phone, like the question, and they can just enter whatever information in. And then behind me on the screen is all of the inputs from everybody in the audience for everyone to see. So it's not only just not having just that one person share their information for themselves, like to do that own work themselves, but we're working collaboratively in looking at information. And there's different ways to use it, right? But you can easily embed it into PowerPoint. It's just a very easy tool to use, but it's mentimeter.com. There are free versions and then there are paid versions, but definitely an easy tool to set up and get going for your event.
One thing I love about it, and one of the many things I love about it, but also it's something I'm seeing that you do, is now more than ever, people want engagement, right? We were locked away from each other. And now not only do we want to feel part of something, but we also want to feel like we're helping to create the thing, and utilizing these tools in the right way. Again, a tool in the wrong hand is used the wrong, or a tool and it could be really powerful. But you can actually help your audience feel like they are shaping the direction of this talk. They're creating this experience with you. And yeah, you're going to perk up, put your phone away, and really get even more clued in to what's going on. Utilized right. Some of these tools can feel like a gimmicky, sort of tacky thing, or they can be really powerful.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one way that I use that I test tried it recently in Nashville at a speech where I wasn't quite sure what direction the audience wanted to go into. So in my presentation, I was ready to go with whatever storyline that they may choose, but I actually had them vote for what direction they wanted the story to go into. You know, do you want to hear more about topic A, B, or C? And so they would vote on that, and then we'd go on that topic. I'd pull up those slides. And is fumbling through a presentation to get to the right slide, is that kind of messy? A little, but quite honestly, it delivered better results in terms of being able to cater that story to what they wanted to hear.
How fun. Have you ever read one of those books where you pick a thing and then it like completely changes the story all the way through? Have you ever, I've never heard it put the way you're putting it. That is so much fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And you can tell in my background, I'm especially a children's book lover. It's something that influenced my life and my children's life a lot. As they were growing up, as I was growing up, and those types of books really made an impact. And I think not only from a creativity standpoint, but for us as presenters, being able, again, to be able to use those tools and curate that content on site, on point, so that when you get those speaker reviews at the end, they really don't have the excuse of saying, well, that wasn't relevant to me. Well, yeah, it was, because you curated it.
See, this is why you're the tech innovator. Let's shift a little bit into the stories that we choose for a particular audience and how we can utilize some of this data to shape our own stories. Because I mean, it's a life experience. The story is the story, right? Well, a lot of our stories has to do with emphasis and relevance, right? How can this kind of data, geeky data, that's amazing, help me as the person up there presenting?
Yeah. And it's really interesting because the class that you had mentioned that, I do work a lot with PCMA, and it's a class on event measurement and analytics. And we spend a huge part of that time of taking all of this, could be considered very techy, very, has your eyes kind of glazed with numbers and charts and whatnot. And so how do you take not only the fear out of it, but how do you deliver that information in a way where people can hear it, right? Really hear it and absorb it. And we use storytelling as that method. And I think same goes for presenters. A lot of what we talk about is it's not just throwing numbers up, especially if you're delivering very scientific information or medical information, and you've just got all sorts of data points on your screen. And to some extent, some of that information is valuable. But if you're trying to deliver whatever your message is, right? A chart with a table with 30 rows and 5 columns is not going to do it, right? So how do you summarize that in a way where the audience is going to receive it? And there is a whole science behind what kind of charts you use for what kind of information, colors. I started my career in PR, and for whatever reason in my head, it stuck out at me. Don't use the color red for your fonts because that has a connotation of fear or anger. So even to this day, whenever I see a red font, I'm like, oh, wait, is it used in the right way? So a lot of it is about that. Like, how do you take data in your stories? Data gives validity and credibility to your stories. But if you don't deliver that in the right way with the right chart or the right visual, then it can get
And
lost.
it could get way too heady, right? Like you said, it could get overdone. A good recipe could get could be great, and then you just keep doing, and it's just overdone. But I think that the death knell in any presentation is you're utilizing the data for you so that you can deliver. I just want to put a thumbtack in this. It doesn't mean you're going to give the data to the audience, because most of them do not want all the information. So there's a difference between getting the data and utilizing it to help you connect to the audience, to just kind of dumping the data all over their heads and they're ready to clue out.
Right. Well, it's kind of two sets, right? You've got the set of data that's going to help you develop and deliver your content. Then there's the data that may be embedded in your content that you're trying to deliver. And that's a whole different set of data and how you deliver it. But again, our job as speakers is to make sure we understand what message we want to get across. And if that is using data points, making sure we know how to use those data tools like bar graphs, and do you use a donut or do you use a pie chart, and what colors to use, but making sure that comes across very clearly, succinctly. But yeah, so definitely two different buckets. There's so much data speakers can use in so many different ways.
And the tool used well does wonders, right? It gets your audience engaged, and also really solidifies that you are the authority in that subject. But again, utilizing the other set of data to understand how deep does this audience want to go. If you're talking to an audience full of data geeks, you it's probably really fun for you, right? You get to go deeper and talk the language and show the graphs and, all of that. If you're talking with just a room full of speakers who want to know how to improve their storytelling, they're not going to want that depth of the method behind what you're going to be doing. They just want the bullet points so that they can take some of that and then translate it into their own presentation, really connect with the audience. So before we dive in
Yes.
a little bit to the storytelling part of it, I know by this point, there's a good number of people within our SpeakPact audience that are going to want to know, how do I find Vinnu Deshetty? What's the best way to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's the best way to find me at Vinnu, which is Vinnu, Deshetty, Deshetty. And I'm there. Come find me. Happy to connect with you. DM me with any questions. I'm always happy to share information and also learn something as well. So if there's a tool that you use, definitely I'd love to
And
hear
I
about it.
assume there's not a whole lot of Vinnus out there. Definitely not Vinnu Deshetty. So Vinnu, pretty straightforward.
Yes.
She should be pretty easy to find and definitely reach out. I love your posts. I love all the things.
Thank
All
you.
right. So how can I improve my talk, or at least my stories, by understanding who it is I'm speaking with and what they want to walk away with? Yeah.
Well, I think that's spot on. It's the very first piece is really understanding who your audience is. Whether you're going with the gut instinct, or information from the event organizer, or using those AI tools, or a combination of all of that, right? But that's where you start. And I think most speakers do start there. But then it's a journey, right? Taking those data points that you have around who's there, then figuring out what is it that they really want to know. That's their intent, right? That's what we call in the data world psychographics. So what is the purpose that they're coming to your session for? And building out that story from there. You may have to go, just like with AI, and as we do with any writing or speaking, it's going through those reiterations of, okay, I think that this is it. Now, how do I test it? And go back and see if does that really meet my objectives of meeting what my audience wants to hear. Or maybe it's not what they don't want to hear, in a way, but whatever message that you're trying to get across that's valuable to them. But definitely going through that journey of figure out who you're talking to, what do they want to know, and then revisiting it, right, to test it out. Is what you're delivering, what you think you're delivering, really what they want? And then, I also like to test it out in speaker surveys. If your event organizer is not doing speaker surveys, do it on site, right right there. Do a midway check throughout your session or at the end and say, did you get the information you needed? I know a lot of times with speaker surveys, recently I've been getting speaker surveys back and there's just not enough data there for me to gauge. It's good to see the comments, but it doesn't give me a sense of what the whole room thought. So you have to do a little bit more digging. So I try to be proactive and ask those questions in
I love that you
sessions.
brought that up, because one thing that I have seen, you're right, that sometimes, on those feedback forms, if they're even offered, and there's tech for that too, that's a whole nother topic, which is kind of fun. But a lot of times they're skewed. They just want you to make you feel good. Like, it's not necessarily the deeper understanding of what they were feeling in any given part of your talk. Something I have found to be really powerful, and let me know if you've ever tried this or if you can see the value in this, is, usually as speakers, we want somebody filming us so we can study how we were doing and improve, right, on our talks, and maybe utilize some of that for B-roll or promotional purposes. What's really powerful also is to film the audience while you're talking. And sometimes the organizers will let you do that. It could be just cameras, right, and little tripods pointed on either side of the stage towards the audience. But then you're hearing you talk in the background, and you're seeing when they're perking up, or when you're just kind of losing them, or maybe when they're getting upset or crying or whatever it is. You can see it in real time at the point that you're speaking on this certain topic. Have you ever tried that?
I have, and actually, there's technology now that will help you with that. So,
Ooh.
um, and it's not perfect. There's a couple of things, like if you're using perhaps Zoom has some facial recognitions that can tell you, how your audience is reacting. I find that hit or miss. So you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it is something that's evolving. It's coming, right? There's another company called Zenith.
Ooh, facial recognition. I hadn't even gone there in my
Yeah.
head, but oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Okay, keep going.
There's another company called Zenith, and I speak a lot with their director of marketing. We tend to do sessions together. Nick Borelli, and that their company will do this anonymously. So while you're in a session, they are doing that facial recognition of not necessarily facial recognition as much as how people are reacting. What's the
Reading it.
sentiment of, are they excited to be at your event? Are they sleeping? Or, they're able to take all that information without any personal identifiers, right? So it's safe. But they're able to collect that information and provide that feedback back to the organizer to give them something more than what they're getting in surveys. Really valuable. I'm really excited.
I
I
like
think,
that. Where we're
yeah.
not,
Now the
where we're
technology.
not.
I mean, there's a lot of I guess my message here is it's evolving and changing, and it can be in a safe way, but definitely something to keep your eye out for. And even ask your event organizers, are they doing anything? How are they using technology to provide you information to do your job better, right? Delivering that content.
Tech is such a love-hate relationship, right? I, as a speaker, would love that data, that facial recognition data for the mood in any get, and then maybe the graphs that'll show and all that. But at the same time, the whole privacy issue, right? There's just always that delicate balance, whole different topic. But I hadn't even, I hadn't even gone there. I was just thinking a couple of old phones with, on a
Yeah.
tripod, but yeah, it's getting more and more sophisticated with every single event. Really, what you have shared, Vinu, in this final segment, um, is foundational through the ages, right? It's still we're still building on this on the proven foundation, and that's audience connection, the psychographics, all of those things. You kind of catapulted me back to the 80s when you even said the word psychographics, because that was like one of my favorite classes in college. And I think that the very handsome professor was thinking I was hitting on him, but I really wasn't. I went to him after one of our sessions and said, I'd really like the recording on digital. He had been
He was
talking about a
taking your
recording.
sentiment from a reaction from his class and using that in his evaluation of how he did.
Exactly. It's like, who actually likes psychographics? But I found it very, very interesting, it's foundational to what you need to understand if you're going to really understand your audience, their mood, how you can move the mood of an audience, all those kinds of nuances, and that plus, all the other neat tools that we now have. Um, it was funny how it really hasn't changed a lot. There's the way we now understand audiences and relate to them has evolved, but the foundation is still the same.
I agree with you. I think all of us are data geeks inside. I said this before, and I really do believe it. We've all been processing this information in different ways. We just haven't put the word data analysis to it, and formalized it, in a way where, oh, yeah, that's data. And here are tools that can help us do this even better outside of our bodies, right?
Yes. All right. So as we wrap, there was so much goodness here. We didn't even jump into the area of virtual events, which I know you are a definite innovator in that space as well. So maybe I can bring you back and we can talk about that
Love
whole
to.
subject. But how I would like for us to close out today is for to leave the SpeakPact audience with something tactical, something tangible that they can put into action tomorrow and really up their game when it comes to getting those premium engagements, connecting with not only the audience, but the actual organizer, right? The first step is to connect with the organizer so that you can connect with the audience. How can we use some of these tech innovations or just some of your advice to do that? You and I are here today in a collaborative pact to make a greater impact and bring that to the SpeakPact audience. So I'll let you
So,
close with
first
that.
and foremost, just keep it simple. Don't think everything that we talked about today is something that you got to do, right? That can
Yes.
be overwhelming. So, that would defeat the purpose. So, really figure out what you want to do. Like, what is your goal, and work backwards to that, right? Like, how does that get you to your goal? So, if your goal is to ensure that your content speaks to the people that are attending a certain show, then great. Talk to the event organizer, get as much information you can. Use AI to help you even enhance that even more, whether it's your starting point of figuring out who's attending that event, or even putting some of your session key takeaways and ask it, will this resonate with that audience? That's another prompt we didn't talk about, but is possible. And then always going back to reevaluating, keep asking for that data in your session. So data is pre, during, and post as well. So, but ultimately, really just keep it simple. Don't get overwhelmed by it. Just figure out what is it that you really want to accomplish and how data can help you.
I'm glad you started off with the simple part because I know that there's just like, this is just whoosh. But that's why you hire somebody like Vinnu Deshetty. But over and above that, the clarity piece that you spoke about, if you are clear about the needle you want to move in the room, reverse engineer from that. And again, keep it simple, not only for yourself, but for the audience. You can only really bring them so far in 30 to 90 minutes, however much time you have. Utilize the AI and tech tools, but only to help you achieve that thing, not to get so geeky or overwhelmed in it all, because we can, but one little baby step at a time. Let it work for you, right? Not against you. Evaluate and refine. That's what I took away from what you said.
Absolutely. Spot on.
Yay. Well, you were so much fun today. This is an area that is important, but I have cautioned diving into because it can, we can just see the shiny squirrel and want to run that way. And then we're kind of losing the whole point. But utilized right, it can be really, really powerful. And I think following you and connecting with you on LinkedIn, Vinnu Deshetty, that they're going to just one little bite at a time, you get the whole cake. You don't need to just shove it all in your face all at one time, but it's not going anywhere. AI tech, it's only going to grow. So you can either pretend it's not there and lose out on some really powerful opportunities to reach your audience, or just dip, just dip your toe in and one step at a time, understand how it can improve your connection to your audience so that you can grow as a speaker, and become more in demand for those organizers who are looking for people who really understand. All right. Well, I will let you guys all know that the one way that you can show Vinnu and me your appreciation for the time we've spent with you today and the value that we've brought to you today, is to actually give us that like and share this, pay it forward. I had a guest recently who said, post it forward, post this forward. This is important information to be shared. So thank you for the time that you've spent with us. And the way that you can thank us for the time that we've spent with you is just to do that little action of liking, sharing, and spreading the love. So thank you for being here. Ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the SpeakPact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the SpeakPact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.